Alright, mis estudiantes, hoy vamos a discutir los acentos. Es el problema más importante de Español 3. La regla es, okay, so here is the one rule that sort of determines why there have to be accent marks anywhere ever. So, the rule of spoken stress, we're talking about words that don't typically have accent marks on them because they don't need it. They don't need it because they follow one of these two rules. Okay, so rule 1. Words ending in a vowel, an N, or an S are stressed on the next to the last syllable. So for example, here you have casa, libro, mesa, coche, madre, lunes, joven. So, in the case of casa, the next to the last syllable, because hey, it's a two-syllable word, the next to the last syllable would be the ka. So when you say it, you say casa, not casa. Okay, if I said casa, I'd be putting the stress on the SA, which I'm not supposed to do. I'm supposed to put it on the CA. So that's why I say casa. Same thing goes with libro. If I were saying it the wrong way, I would say libro, putting a real stress on the O. But because I know how to say it the right way, and I know that the next to the last syllable, which happens to be the first one, is li, I'm gonna say libro. Okay, it's mesa, not mesa, coche, not coche, madre, not madre, it's hard to say them wrong, lunes, not lunes, and joven, not joven. Rule number 2. If the word ends in a consonant, which is anything other than obviously A, E, I, O, or U, and this does not include N and S also because that was covered in the last rule. So words ending in any consonant other than N or S are stressed on the very last syllable. So for example, you're looking down here at beber. Okay, so beber. You can hear that I say more strongly the ER, which is the last syllable. Okay, same thing with papel. Say more strongly the L than you do the pop. If you say it papel, that's weird. Beber, that's weird. Verdad, you can hear that I stress the DAD more, so that's correct. Okay, so if the word, and most Spanish words do, follow one of these two rules, then you will not need any sort of an accent mark. I have entitled this part, Palabras Rebeldes, rebel words. So the only time that you ever put a written accent on is when the word breaks one of those two rules we just talked about. So words that break rule number 1, which would be where you had the stress on the next to the last syllable. Okay? So, for example, you have comí. Alright, it's ending in a vowel, so by all the rules, the stress should go on the CO. But because this is, preterite, and you gotta say it a little differently, you're saying comí, then you have to put that accent mark on the I. Okay, miércoles. If you were going to say this by the rule, then you would say miércoles and put the accent stress on the O. But that's not how it goes. It goes miércoles. And that is why you need that accent mark on the E to show that it is stressed more strongly. Cuídate. The accent goes on the I. Okay, by all the rules, it should go on the A, and it should be cuídate. But that just sounds weird. You want to say cuídate. So that's why the I gets the accent mark. Here's another preterite verb, vivió. Okay, because I'm pronouncing the O more strongly. I should be pronouncing the I more strongly, vivió, but that's not right. Vivió is right. I have to put the accent mark on the O. Pardon my throat clearing. Estación. Pretty much any word that you see typically that has an I-O-N on it is going to have an accent mark on the O. This one also breaks rule number 1. The stress is on the last syllable, not the next to the last one, so that's why it's estación, not estación. Okay, so words that break rule number 2, which is the one with the stress on the last syllable, you have some examples here. Lapis. You say lapis, not lapis, right? And since typically this word that ends in a Z, which is a consonant, would have the stress on the last syllable, the I, and it doesn't, you're going to put it on the A. Climax has a stress on the I because typically it would be climax, and it's not, it's climax. So the I gets the stress. Difícil, okay, it ends in an L, which is a consonant, so should theoretically go difícil, but that's not the way it goes. It goes difícil. So since the stress goes more on the second I after the F when you say it, that's where you put the accent mark. I've said before, and I will say probably a million times more, that anything that ends in A, C, I, O, N, always, pretty much without any exception, has an accent mark on the O. So the most common use of the O accent are the words that end in ación. For example, nación, concentración, invitación, explicación. We could go on for days. If it ends in ación, it's got an accent on the O. The truth of the matter is that most of the words that end in ON do have an accent, but there is one huge exception to that. Third person plural in the preterite. For example, jugaron, they played, or amaron, they loved, or vinieron, or dijeron, those will never have an accent mark on the O. Okay, so third person plural in the preterite, the ellos, ellas, ustedes form, will never ever have that accent, even though they end in an ON. One of the reasons why accents are so darned important is that an accent can completely change the meaning of a word. For example, the word me. If you're looking at it unaccented, there on the left, it means my. But if you put an accent on it, and you look at to the right there, it means me. There's a little difference between my and me. Tu with no accent on it is your, but tu with the accent on it is you. El, no accent, is thee, whereas el, with the accent, is he. It gets really confusing when you get down to the demonstrative adjectives, the ones that show you which thing you're talking about. So, for example, este means this, when it has no accent. When it has an accent on the first E, este, it means this one. Ese means that, unless you put an accent mark on the first E, and then it means that one. Which is not a huge difference, but it's still a little bit of a difference. Ese. And there are several others just like that we won't get into today. Some miscellaneous ones that are commonly used. For example, aún, no accent means even. Aún with an accent means still or yet. It's kind of a big difference. Como, no accent, means as or like, but como with an accent means how. Mas, no accent, means but, and mas with an A accented means more. Si with no accent is if. Si with an accent is yes. Solo, no accent, means alone. Solo with an accent mark means only. So it is very important that you get the accent mark right when you're doing your writing, because you literally have written probably something that was not what you meant if you don't put the accent mark on. And last but not least, question words. Question words have an accent when used inside an interrogative sentence or a question. So, some of these words can also be used in a declarative sentence. If you're using it in a declarative sentence, there will be no accent mark. But if you're using it in an interrogative sentence or in a question, there will in fact be an accent mark. So, let's take a look. For example, ¿qué es el problema? What is the problem? You will notice that the word que, meaning what, has a nice accent mark on it, because I just used it in a question or an interrogative sentence. Now, if I use that same word in a declarative sentence, no accent mark. El problema es que no tengo mi papel. The problem is that I don't have my paper. Okay, K is that, but no accent mark there, because I'm using it in a declarative way. ¿Cuándo vas a ver el video? When are you going to watch the video? So, cuando is in a question, so of course it's got an accent mark on the A. But if I put it in a sentence that is declarative, for example, voy a verlo cuando tengo tiempo, I'm going to watch it when I have time. See, it's still when, but it's not in a question, so no accent mark. The last example. ¿Dónde está tu amigo? Where is your friend? Donde, in this case, meaning where, gets a lovely little accent mark because it's part of a question. But in the declarative sentence below, it does not. En el lugar en donde trabajamos. In the place we work in. Which is probably horrible grammar, but that's fine. So that is Christina's quick and dirty guide to how to do accent marks. There are other more complicated rules, and the truth of the matter with some of them is they're very hard to just hear, so you have to sort of memorize which ones go where. But from now on, you should at least have a little something to go on when trying to decide whether a word has an accent mark or not. Buena suerte!